It was a beautiful week. Most of the forest foliage has returned. This broken turkey egg in the trail is somewhat of a representation of all the failed nests around the sanctuary. The second goose nest has failed, as well as a bluebird nest and starling nest.
I think this tree is popular.
A mad rush of warblers is still coming through. It's hard to look at a willow tree and not see one these days. Their songs can be heard throughout the sanctuary, especially the zee-zee-zazoo-zee of the black-throated green warbler. Yellow warblers have a strong presence. They can be heard in fields and along forest edges. If you're lucky enough to catch a glimpse of them, the males and females can be easily distinguished. The males have some bold red streaking on their chest. With a little luck and proper conditions, they can be seen basking in the sun. This female yellow warbler spent the cold, sunny morning preening herself. But she wasn't the only one who took advantage of this sunny, low-lying, wind-blocked refuge. There were a number of asylum seekers, such as this female American redstart. This male yellow rump warbler. A least flycatcher. As well as a chestnut-sided warbler. In the meantime, the blooming apple trees are really attracting the Baltimore Orioles. It seems as if they are going to every individual flower and picking out the insects inside. This behavior can also be readily seen outside of the sanctuary, such as on the bike path that goes through the Utica Marsh. The other two examples were males. This is a female Baltimore Oriole. It seems that the rose-breasted grosbeak males spend most of their time singing, while the female spends most of her time foraging. This is probably due to the fact that the males defend their territory while the female builds the nest for them. Once the brood is laid, both the male and female will incubate the eggs, and then they will also both feed the hatchlings. And while the male cares for the fledglings, the female will be off building another nest. Scarlet tanagers are not uncommon, but are difficult to see due to their tendency to stay up in the canopy, out of sight. The best way to find them is to listen for their song. It's a robin-like carol, but much raspier and not as many phrases. The female scarlet tanagers have no scarlet on them at all, but they are colored yellow instead. However, like the male, they still have a thick bill and dark wings. A white-crowned sparrow stopped at the feeding stations. It must be on its way up north to its breeding ground. They breed in the shrubs of subalpine zones and mountains, or just below the Arctic tundra. They have been heavily studied by ornithologists for the regional dialects they have in their songs. There have also been several Swainson's thrushes passing through the sanctuary. The melodious song of the wood thrush is heard throughout the sanctuary. This is important since their numbers have been declining in recent decades. The decline is attributed to fragmented woodlands. With their breeding habitat getting smaller, it is also becoming more susceptible to the parasitic nesting cowbirds. Some people also speculate that another, less significant contributing factor comes from their close relative, the robin. In recent years, American robins have been more prone to nest in the forest, and therefore potentially displacing the wood thrushes. The ovenbird may look like a thrush, but it is actually a member of the warbler family. They get their name from the oven-like nests that they build in the ground. The sharp chip that this ovenbird is giving is a warning call. Given the time of year and the territorial behavior of this bird, it is likely that there is a nest being built nearby. Its mate can also be heard chipping in the background. Most sandpipers migrate in flocks and nest on the ground. The solitary sandpiper, however, is an exception to these rules. As the name suggests, they travel alone and by night. Most solitary sandpipers spend their winter in the Amazon basin, along river banks and around swamps. Now they are on their way north to spruce bogs, where they will find a songbird's nest high in the trees from a previous year and use it as their own. We had an osprey fly over the sanctuary early in the week. This video, however, was taken in the Utica Marsh, where they can be regularly seen. Life in the aquatic world is a little bit more subtle, but it's still bountiful. These fathead minnows are lounging in the shade of the beaver pond. In the creek leading into the beaver pond, water striders can be found. There are about 20 species found in New York, all in the same genus, Garrus. They typically inhabit ponds or slow-moving eddies in the creek, but this one seems to have gotten stuck in the fast-moving current. The two sets of hind legs have very fine hairs that allow them to float and skate across the water using the surface tension, whereas the front pair is short and strong and used for capturing prey. In one of the creeks running through the backwoods, there is an abundance of amyletid mayfly minnow larvae. Some of the distinguishing features of these mayfly larvae are the antennae less than half the width of the head, and 3 light tails of roughly equal length with a dark band running through the middle. Amyletid minnow mayfly larvae are strong swimmers and most often found in swift-moving streams amongst pebbles. However, they will rest in slower-moving parts of the streams, clinging to larger rocks, as they are right now. They typically feed on detritus, but are also equipped with mandibles that are able to scrape algae off of rocks. As larvae, they will typically live 1 to 4 years, depending on the species, but it is rare for the adults to live more than a couple of days. Their occupancy in a stream is a good indicator of a healthy stream, since they are highly sensitive to pollution. Not far downstream, a small wood frog was found. Back in the man-made pond, there are what appears to be flatworms, where there were once toad eggs. There are also many whirligig beetles on the prowl. After the heavy rains, it was tough to walk across some of our boardwalks without stepping on snails. And their close relatives were about also. And tree planting can also be very difficult without disturbing ant colonies. And while sitting by the vernal pool one day, this pesky green bottlefly kept bugging me. But then I had to consider why I'd considered this fly pesky. It was doing me no harm, and actually I found it quite intriguing. They can carry disease, but everyone in the world has had one land on them and their food. And how many of us have actually gotten typhoid fever? I know this one is a male because his eyes are spaced farther apart than a female's would be. I can only assume he's feeding at some of the oils my skin is secreting. And when he leaves my hand, he may fly 20 miles or more away. This mouse carcass has been in the trail for several days. It was likely killed by a fox, and the fox went on about hunting for the evening, meaning to come back to the mouse, and then forgetting. However, there is no way to verify that scenario. Today, it is loaded with beetles. These are ridged carrion beetles. They are black with ridges along the elytra, and if they were flying, the underside of their wing would be a metallic blue. Their presence indicates the presence of fly larvae also, since most adults do not feed on the carrion, but the maggots within. The females will lay their eggs sometime in the spring once per year, and the beetle larvae will feed on the carrion. What I believe is happening is that is a male in the middle, sandwiched in between two females. I suspect this because of the size disparity. After she wrestles him away, the bottom one will scurry off. And then, after some more wrestling, it appears that the top two do end up mating for a little while. Then lurking nearby is the red velvet mite. As adults, these arachnids prey on other invertebrates, although the nymphs will just parasitize the invertebrates that the adults will prey on. Some mites do destroy crops and gardens, but not these. They are considered beneficial since they prey upon the actual garden pests. Although the red velvet mites actively seek out their prey, other predaceous arachnids, such as this thrice-banded crab spider, lie in wait for their prey to come to them. She has injected this ant with a venom that will not only kill it, but digest it from the inside, and then she will slurp up the soupy meal, leaving nothing but the exoskeleton of this ant. On a lighter note, the dancer flies seem to be abundant this week, as do these ground beetles, and so do these beautiful emerald green six-spotted tiger beetles. This millipede was also sighted. Its name is Apheloria virginiensis. There doesn't seem to be a common name associated with it. They are a mahogany brown with thin yellow bands and a body outlined in yellow with yellow legs. This color may vary a little bit, especially regionally, but the pattern is the same. As a defense mechanism, they secrete a cyanide-like compound. While poisonous to some animals, it's mostly harmless to humans, although it can cause rashes and eye irritability in some people. Many people report that this compound has a scent of marzipan, but it's still recommended that you wash your hands if you get any on you. Meanwhile, in the world of ferns, the ostrich vases are forming nicely, and fiddleheads keep sprouting like these lady ferns, and the quite remarkable cinnamon fern. Goldie's wood fern, and the narrow-leafed spleenwort looks fully matured. And in the realm of the angiosperms, daisies have been blooming, trillium are still in bloom, eastern foamflower looks good, and who could forget the forget-me-nots, which come in purple or blue and possess perfoliated leaves. Common speedwell, wild geranium, and on the rarer side, the golden alexandrias. A new moss was found of the Physidens genus, or pocket moss. I need a closer look, but I believe it is the maidenhair pocket moss. Still keeping track of the oil spill stump? And while chasing around Swainson's thrushes, we found a new patch of the Thallus liverwort. And that sums up another great week at Spring Farm Cares.